So welcome back to Audience Architect, the podcast where we delve into the minds of the trailblazers shaping the future of audience engagement and data-driven strategies. Today, we're recording episode number 10, live from the floor of MACMA's Industry Day on April 4th, 2024. And I have the distinct pleasure of sitting down with someone who truly embodies the spirit of innovation in the intersection of data, insights, and audience understanding. Joining us today is Dr. Joetta Gobell, the Senior Vice President of Research and Insights at Dotdash Meredith. Since joining the company in 2018, Joetta has played a pivotal role in leveraging first-party data to not only understand audiences, but also to inform advertising partnerships, which we will speak about for sure, and the product, and execute large-scale primary research projects. These projects span across product, editorial, and brand initiatives, truly setting the bar for what it means to integrate data into the fabric of a company's decision-making processes. Before her tenure at Dotdash, Joetta was Vice President of Primary Research and Ad Sales at A+E Networks, where she undertook substantial qualitative and quantitative projects that dove deep into cultural issues impacting the TV industry and its audiences. Her career also includes roles as a qualitative researcher, innovation consultant, and strategist at Magid, as well as a specialist in the advanced planning and strategy at Nissan North America. So in today's conversation, we'll explore a wide array of topics with Joetta, from the challenges and triumphs of data strategy to the future of digital media insights. We'll dip into how Dotdash is navigating the seismic shifts in the industry, such as the end of the third-party cookies, and how partnerships like the one with Amazon are connecting content consumption to the moment of need for audiences everywhere. Joetta, it's an honor to have you here today, and welcome.
Thank you so much.
So let's start with your role as VP of Data Strategy and Insights. Could you give us a glimpse into what a typical day looks like for you?
Well, I think like most of you, a typical day looks like chaos and unpredictability, and you go where the next thing is happening. But overall, my team is the research and insights team who use our first-party and syndicated data to understand users in their moment of need, the measurement team who seeks to be able to prove that the way we are reaching people is having an impact, data journalism, where we bring things to life and content on our sites, and as well as our primary research group who does those longer studies and those deeper studies to fuel our insights and understanding. So,
well, Dotdash Meredith, for those who aren't fully familiar, is a powerhouse of a combination. So the Meredith side has small, tiny brands like People, Better Homes and Garden, Food and Wine, Southern Living, In Style, and then they married them so interestingly with digital first brands like Verywell Health, Investopedia, The Spruce, and Trip Savvy. Do you have, Joetta, a role across all the company, or how does
I'm so lucky in my job that I work at a place where people across the company are hungry to understand the humans that they're building all these things for. And I love humans. I think we are the best and worst thing that has ever been. We are amazing and tragically terrible all in one go. And I love that. And I get to work editorial, licensing, commerce, obviously ad sales, innovation, ad product. It's just so fun that my team and our voice gets to be represented in all of those places as a real seat at the table. We've all had the experience where a research group becomes the gatekeeper at the end of the process to do thumbs up or thumbs down on everyone's ideas, and I am obsessively watching out for that in my job so that never happens to our group, because I want us to be one of the inputs and inspirations to what we do, not the final check, because if you're the final check, eventually people find ways not to have you involved in the process. And so that passion for humans, I really think that can be the starting place for bringing everyone's skills and ideation together versus the final check.
Well, let's double down on humans for a minute, because we've been talking about the AI so much. How does your work connect human concerns to business values? And can you give us an example?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously going to talk about Decipher because it is our cookieless intent targeting tool, but it is also a major source of insight for us to understand humans in a moment of need. And our Decipher and intent targeting is really about, targeting in media is often about who you are and what we know about you or think we know about you from past behaviors or what you've told us. Intent targeting is not about reaching people. It's about reaching content across all of our sites: health, travel, finance, beauty, family, all of those kinds of things. Showing up, helping advertisers show up in the content where anyone reading that is in the moment of need that you want to reach. And what's really fun about that is like Decipher, the technology we built, the system we built, it just sits on top of all of our awesome content and allows us to know things like people interested in family travel. Obviously, you should run on content about family travel on Travel and Leisure or Trip Savvy. That's a gimme. But where do you go from there? And Decipher allows us to say, hey, we actually know through, 30 million users a day coming across our properties, we know that people reading about family travel on our travel sites are very much more likely to be reading about the Nintendo Switch and tablets on LifeWire, our tech site. And if you've ever traveled with children, you know why that is you're like, here you go, please, for now, I don't care about screen time, just watch this. And so much of what we do every day, even though it can be like, I'm making a targeting recommendation, it's never just a targeting recommendation, it's a story about people in a moment of need. And that is just incredibly interesting and fun.
I'm intrigued by Decipher. When was it launched? What was the need? And just can you give us a little tutorial sort of on what it is?
So I'm terrible at remembering specific dates and times. So it was launched in the spring. But it is really a extension of what we were doing from the beginning at Dotdash. Because at Dotdash at the beginning, which used to be about.com, and then broke apart, got rid of, broke the massive one single destination for everything into high quality content focused on helping people answer questions, get inspiration, get answers in their moment of need across a small set of verticals, starting with Very Well Health. So really taking all of our health content and taking the best stuff and throwing out a lot of the other stuff, because the point earlier about it not being about quantity, but about, is this content actually helping someone? So we, from the beginning of Dotdash, used that approach in targeting as one. Obviously, we were a digital media company. We do all the other ways of targeting too, but we were always encouraging our clients to also use this way of, we'll give you a list of the content areas across our site where you're going to reach the right people and teach you something about that broader moment of need. The magic is when you add Dotdash and Meredith together. At Dotdash, we had a couple food sites. At Dotdash Meredith, we have all recipes. We have Serious Eats. We have Simply Recipes. We have the largest collection of incredibly high quality food content that people come to every day, which means as a researcher, the signal got so much stronger. You could see so much more, and it pushed through the noise as opposed to as a smaller Dotdash. So for me, the biggest upside was so much more information about people in their moment of need. And so Decipher is really bringing the power of that together. And I always joke about how it's kind of a parasite on top of all of the work that my colleagues do, is that we just sit on top of all of these incredible bodies of quality editorial work that's organized in a really clean structural taxonomy system that's unique to each brand and built not by my team, but by the editorial team to categorize things for users. And what that allows us to do is identify, like, I don't need data to tell you run on travel, family travel content on Travel and Leisure if you want to reach people interested in family travel. Nobody needs data for that. But what I do need data for is contextual targeting works. We all know that. The challenge is scaling it. I don't have to scale it by getting more generic in the travel category. I get to scale it by understanding people who read family travel. What else are they reading about? And so this all, we were doing this when we moved from about.com to Dotdash, which means, you mentioned the third-party cookie deprecation. It means, like, we're ready in terms of targeting, and we have years of knowing how it works and knowing what works and what doesn't work and refining the signals that we use to make those targeting recommendations. So the cookie goes away and nothing changes about the core way that we help our partners reach people in their moment of need, which is really kind of fun, because now we get to really bring that out there and celebrate it.
There was a lot of discussion this morning in Amanda's presentation and then after about the whole privacy discussion. So how does Dotdash Meredith handle, all of this behavior and data that you're unearthing?
Well, one of the core elements of Decipher is I actually don't care who you are at all. When you show up on and this is important for cookieless, and this is also important for privacy, is that it isn't that I know that a couple of weeks ago you read about family travel and now you're showing up somewhere else and I'm retargeting you. Because as I love to say, we're all beautiful weirdos. Like where you went first, second, and third may have nothing to do with the same moment of need. And so where you're showing up later might not be the same thing. So with Decipher in particular, it's all aggregated looking at patterns of overlap of content consumption. It's not about your demographics. I'm not trying to guess how old you are or what your gender is. I'm not trying to guess anything about you. I'm trying to understand the patterns of content consumption and derive what that means about anyone who's coming to that content, which to me is so much more important because it makes it less about the stereotypes and generalizations like, oh, if you're reading about potty training on Very Well Family, probably you're a woman from 25 to 30-something years old. But what if you're like an 85-year-old man who's caring for your grandchild and you're reading about potty training? Is that customer not of interest? Is that not a relevant moment of need? And, I talk about one of my fun fact is that I am a avid gamer. And I love video games. I play them every day. My favorite game ever made is GTA 5. Can't wait for GTA 6. But
Grand Theft Auto.
But yes, maybe don't let your kids play it, but it's a great game. Because of that behavior, I will read content about games quite a bit. And I now get an abundance of Dorito and energy drink ads because I promise you I am in a male 18 to 24-year-old audience everywhere. But I am 48 and I am not male. But understanding it doesn't mean I'm not a gamer. I'm definitely a gamer. But it doesn't generalize. Demographics have always been a proxy, and this allows us just not to worry about who you are and just worry about what you need right now.
So this morning, Len Roberto was showing some of what he called crappy slides, and he was referring to just the enormous amount of data that a lot of these signals indicate. So how do you translate that down to the various different constituencies who need to make sense of it and make decisions off the back of it? Yeah,
so for Decipher in particular, it's very simple. It runs just on two signals, contextual overlap in content and content consumption. But my team obviously has their fingers in all kinds of data. And I think I personally think the key is I don't necessarily need everyone to understand all of the data signals. I need to understand the decision they are trying to make. Tell them what we are seeing in the data, what we recommend from the data point of view, along with some information as to where that comes from. But it shouldn't be everyone's job to understand the data that my team works with every day. That's why we have this job, is to understand what you need and what answers you have and what the gaps are in what you need to make decisions about, and then show up with the right data. And, on my team, I don't generally have, people have specialties. Everyone's better or worse at different things. But in general, there's a real expectation with each of the sub-teams that you kind of know how to work at least at some level with all the data sources, because you need to be able, your job is to be a bridge to answer questions, not pull data and send spreadsheets. And so I really think about that really, my team knows that I'm allergic to the data dump. Like if you just sent data to someone, you actually didn't even do your job. Your job is going to be replaced by AI any day now. So please do your actual job, which is to take that information and share what it means about people and why the business stakeholder you're working with should care about that and how it should influence what you do.
So why GTA, by the way?
Because it has the best characters that have ever been made. I like an open world. I don't want to have to do a task if I'm not very patient. If I'm not very good at something, I don't want to do it, and I go do something else. So it's amazing.
I think in my research I saw that Decipher has a partnership with Amazon. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah.
What's that all about? That's interesting.
So it's actually really fun. So Amazon obviously knows a lot about what individuals who are logged in users are currently shopping for. Like, I know that you're in market. Like, I am currently in market for like a carry-on suitcase because the zipper on the one I use is acting a little suspicious and I don't want to be stuck in an airport with that situation. And so I've been looking. Amazon knows that, right? And they have thousands of in-market and lifestyle audiences that advertisers can say like, oh, I want to reach people all the way from like in-market for baby gear to like in-market for hummus. Like, it can get very specific and very broad. And that's based on their knowledge of individuals. What Decipher can bring is our knowledge of moments of need. And it becomes this beautiful partnership of, so you, according to the individual behaviors, then they can say, hey, people who are in market for back to school products they then look at our structural taxonomies, which are our groups of content. Like, we have something on birdie.com all about scalp care. We have family travel on travel and leisure. Like, we have these groups of content in a hierarchical system. And they can say, the people we know are in market for back to school products, here's where we're more likely to see them show up across your structural taxonomies, right? Like, and it'll be things like ages and stages, kids on Very Well Family, or things like that. So they have this idea of translating human targeting, individual person targeting, into what content is a signal that you might be in that audience. What we have is, what are the content consumption patterns? And so I can say to Decipher, like, let's put all of my school and back to school supply content in as the seed. Tell me what the connections are and tell me the content consumption connections. And then we can just say, where do we agree? You have a signal and we have a signal. Let's use them both to make it stronger. It's really, really kind of simple. And then just say, so those are the areas where together we have the strongest signal, which takes their audience targeting based on people and transforms it into an identity-free content-based, which expands addressability to all kinds of places, like on Safari and all those kinds of things, and allows us to learn from each other and make the signal stronger. And then it's available in their system for advertisers to buy against.
Very, very cool. So to the extent you can tell us something that Neil Vogel would not want you to say,
I would never tell you something Neil Vogel would not want me to say.
President, CEO. How you doing with it? How's Decipher working?
So this is the great part. I happily get to tell you that it's crushing it. And it performs very well. We have, for the larger investments to help advertisers take the risk off the table, we have a sales guarantee where we'll guarantee a certain ROAS or whatever their key KPIs might be in the campaign. And those have been successful. And the other part that's really great about it is we didn't come into it wondering if it will work. It is really the result of years of learning how it works and what you were saying earlier, like, do it now. Like, we were doing it until we got to the point where we had the signals that we could make this larger system and larger way to do things. So it performs really well. It gets excellent, clients. It's really helpful for clients because they can see exactly where their ads might run. Like, it's very transparent. And then in addition, one of the things that I love is it doesn't push us into the place where we just have to say, your campaign was a total success. Everything went perfectly well and everything is great. Because anyone who's ever done any advertising campaign or work in it knows parts of it don't work. Some of it works better than others. With Decipher targeting, we can literally look and see the results and engagement and those kinds of things by content area and learn something about people in their moment of need in return. And be able to go back to the client and say, not only did it perform, and we met the guarantee, or it met your benchmarks, or the efficiency was whatever, but to say, and in addition, here are some things we learned about this moment of need based on that performance that we think can inform how you think about moving forward. So it becomes consultative and like more conversational and less just like automated push a button.
Yeah, it sounds like certainly a way to overcome how many clicks did I get or how many impressions did I get, right?
Yeah.
How does your career when you were at A+E Networks and in television influence what you're doing here in this different medium, if at all?
Well, I think in all of my jobs, it's back to my obsession with humans. At A&E, I got to do amazing projects, quant and qual, like around like gender representation in media and all kinds of women in money and all of kinds of like meaty kind of topics. And I think it the through line is the human, but the other thing is that you remember, it gives you that context to know. You can have a tendency to be like, oh, I work at a print and digital media company, therefore all human needs must fit into this world of print and digital media. But I think working at a market research company for all kinds of companies and then working at a television company, it really reminds you that humans go to these things and environments for different reasons, and you should respect that. And there isn't a silver bullet for everything. The answer to everything is not digital advertising. The answer is probably a combination of things based on the actual complexities of what you're trying to achieve. And I think, the television stuff kind of, layers on no, you always get very excited about where you are and you want where you are to win. And it's like, well, but I wanted TV to win there, and I was emphasizing the importance of television and, now the critical role of print and digital. And it's like, actually, it's a rich tapestry, and they're all tools, and they all have pros and cons, and they all have roles in a human's life.
Before we leave television, is all of the innovation in that area and the things we're talking about with things like Netflix and the streaming services, to your looking back at your old industry?
I think there's always evolution in the ways that humans achieve what they want to achieve, including getting the feelings they want to feel or having the experiences they want to feel. But I'm not sure the base motivations change as quickly. I mean, you hear a lot like, oh, maybe the marketing funnel is dead because young people don't. And I'm like, or is it that the ways in which we can achieve the motivations and needs we have are constantly changing? And so one of the things I think is really important about research as a role is to go back to how do we understand what the motivations and values are? And that doesn't change if it's streaming or television or newspapers or telegrams. I don't know, but it doesn't change what you're looking to achieve. Community, information, entertainment, all those core values.
So that brings me to a question that I was wondering where this is going to fit. In light of the significant changes the world has experienced since the onset of the pandemic, could you share how you've observed behavior and content consumption patterns shifting among your audience? And additionally, how has Dotdash Meredith adapted its data strategy and content creation to meet these evolving demands?
So one of the upsides of working at Dotdash Meredith is, and you mentioned Neil, is that Neil is absolutely obsessive with never stopping moving. I mean, one of our core values is act now, not later. And it's probably the one I gravitate toward the most. I'm like, well, let's just try it now. Let's just do it. Let's see what happens. Let's learn. And I think as the pandemic hit, it was obviously changing everyone's lives in really profound ways. And we were able to, and this is what I talked about last time we were here, is we were able to observe in real time the shift of focus in what topics people were leaning into. And that told us something about where people were and where their mindsets were, right? I'll just do a quick one, right when all the office workers went home in early March, no big surprise, all the content on LifeWire and the Spruce, our home site, about home offices went through the roof. That's not surprising. But what's fun is the other thing that went through the roof was skin texture, because you're looking at your freaking face on Zoom all day long, and you didn't have to do that before. And I don't know if you guys remember how horrifying that was, but it was bad and it wasn't pleasant. And then wall decor. Because you're sitting there on Zoom and you're seeing other people's houses and you're seeing into people's lives and you're like, oh no. And then like 3 weeks or a month later, this is my favorite one, ergonomic furniture went through the roof because we're all huddled on our couches like, oh, this is temporary, and now we all have backaches and pain and those sorts of things. But we're constantly paying attention to that. We have this weekly report that my team sends out called Movers and Shakers internally, making sure everyone is aware of like what's top of mind for consumers. If it's Cinco de Mayo, it's tequila drinks. I mean, it's also seasonal stuff, but events in the world show up on our sites, and we can understand how people are coming to us for answers about what's happening. And one of the things we just recently did this partnership with Assembly, the global agency, where we were looking at spring renewal for 2024 and what's different. And we did, some primary research, but also looking at some content consumption patterns. And, one of the key themes that we talked about is that came out of this research was, COVID reset a lot of things. It was not an easy experience. We're social animals. It devastated a lot of those things. It was hard for a lot of people, let alone the health and economic impacts. Just the psychological was hard. Then there was this idea of like, okay, 2023, back to the new normal. We're going to get back in it and blah, blah, blah. And what we're seeing this year is people are like thinking about spring renewal and like we can finally see the blue sky. So we have hope again. And like, what are we going to do? Is that there's this sense of like, maybe I went too quickly back to normal. Maybe I want to spend more time having balance and connecting with my family. And there's this real flip of like, maybe I'm not as worried about my career or my professional trajectory. Maybe I'm more worried. Maybe my main motivators for travel are rest and restoration and reconnecting with friends and family and not experience and adventure and those kinds of things. And so it's COVID was a very monumental thing, but I think our entire job in the research team is to always have our finger on the pulse of what's changing across all the content areas we serve, because the world, the one thing you can be sure of is that there is a sequence of both positively and negatively catastrophic events coming. And so how are we in the position of showing up to help people and inspire people, responding to that and not insisting that we stick with the way we used to think about things or the way we used to deliver things?
So what other world events or cultural patterns are you seeing in the data right now based on what's going on?
Oh boy. Well, I think, so we don't really do news per se. I mean, what we do, like even in our newsy content on our sites, it will be more about what this means for you and how you can think about making decisions. So I think, for instance, an Investopedia, we're, seeing a lot around like, well, actually, Investopedia on our home sites, it's this kind of fun partnership where like, while interest rates were really high, we saw this huge surge in like small projects around the home and like improving, because you're like, well, I'm not getting rid of this house, so I might as well fix this stupid floor. And then you go to the Spruce to like figure out how you're going to retile your bathroom, and then a lot of people read it and then go hire someone because it's a lot of steps. But as sort of the interest rate situation and as people talk about like, oh, I think they're going to be more interest rate cuts and stuff, we watch the home ownership content kind of rise to the top and the DIY stuff kind of fall away. And so it's those kinds of ebbs and flows that I think are really interesting. And then, of course, the amount of traffic that people.com got about articles about Travis and Taylor is monumental. So we see that, of course, but yeah.
Can you talk about a time when data revealed a counterintuitive insight that led to a strategic pivot?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this one, and I have what I think is like a really small, dumb, specific example, but hopefully it will illustrate the point. So it was an actual campaign with a financial company that provides annuities. So these are kind of a low risk, lower return investment vehicle. And when we looked at intent targeting through Decipher, one of the strongest connections was to content around home ownership. Mm-hmm. And the client was a little like, no, we want to reach investors and we want to reach people of this age and this gender and this income. And you can't tell us that the homeownership content only reaches those people, so we're not. And I work with some awesome sales teams, and we helped move them to like, okay, but give it a try, and let's learn from it, and let's see what we learn. And running the annuity campaign on the annuity content on the Balance and Investopedia did really well, of course. People were actively looking into it, and they're like, hey, here I am to help. I can help you get one. 4 times better than that was the home ownership content, because it turned out that despite the client's resistance, the moment of need was not, I want to get an annuity. The moment of need was, I have some money. I would like to invest it in a place that is safer, and I am willing to accept lower returns. And so you're looking into the finances of home ownership, and then along comes an ad, and you're like, wait, I don't know what that is. What is that? And then you learn more about it, and you go to their site, and you ask for information. And I think, for me, the reason I mentioned that example is it also challenges a larger assumption, which is that I hate because I love advertising, is that advertising is this terrible price you have to pay to get through to what you actually want. And I think this kind of thing helps make advertising something that's actually helpful and additive and helps navigate and make decisions if it's done well. It's an actual, like you read that article about retiling your bathroom and there's an ad for Home Depot's professional service to help, or Angie to help you find a tiler. That's helpful. That's not pay this price and close this window and move this video and scroll through this to get to the thing you actually wanted. So
have you surveyed your audiences to determine if they agree with that? Like, in other words, are they feeling less invasive than on Facebook maybe or other places?
So we haven't recently done surveys around this, but one of the things that was fundamental when About.com became Dotdash was a commitment, and they took like at least a third of the ads off of every page, because they were saying, and it was basically an economic experiment where it was like, if the ads are better, we shouldn't need as many of them. We can get more impressions by actually helping people and solving their problems and showing them the right ads than we can by just increasing impressions per session by adding more ads everywhere. And so, and most definitely, we have a lot of user research and stuff that the experience of using our sites is a much more pleasant, less invasive. The ads are not intrusive. We do not do pop-ups. Like, that is a Neil Vogel no-no. Like, you cannot do that sort of thing, because that's just a blocker to someone getting what they need, and that's not what we're here for. So I think we haven't done specifically like, oh, do you like this more? But I've done a number of projects where part of it is comparing the user experience between, say, different health brands. And they'll say like, wow, this, the editorial tone, blah, blah, blah. But what also always comes out in those qualitative projects is like, also, it was just really easy to get to the answer, and the page was really clean, so I could find where things were. And sometimes we can, as an industry, make the opposite decision, and which makes sense. I understand the incentives, but I think it definitely pays out also in traffic growth as well.
We've talked an awful lot about content, both in this discussion and the rest of the sessions. Let's talk about the content producers for a second. How do you partner with the editorial team? Because in essence, everything that you're talking about, it would seem to play a very vital role in this ecosystem.
Yeah,
no?
yeah, and I think it's when they. I'll give an example. So we definitely work very closely with the editorial teams. And it's a very different kind of work than working with the ad sales team, right? For the ad sales team, we're trying to say, like, we're the best place to do this, and here are the great ideas we have that are founded in our understanding of users, right? And it's going to perform. My measurement team is like, look at this awesome performance. With the editorial team, they bring incredible expertise and knowledge, and I talk a lot with my team and internally about how there can be this idea that, like, well, data is truth, and like all other things have to bow to like what the results of the math are. But as we've heard a number of times, the math is chock full of noise. It's not perfect information. It's one source of information. So is, for instance, Caleb Silver's knowledge of things as the editor-in-chief of Investopedia and his sense of what's happening, or Sally Holmes with InStyle. And so what we often do with them is sort of, what are you seeing and thinking in your immersion out in the world of style or finance or whatever it might be? Our travel teams are traveling all the time. And then what are we seeing as behavior on our sites? And then what studies can we do to go understand and talk directly to people about the motivations and values behind those? And how does that help them shape? They already come with what they think they want to do, but it's us saying, like, here's additional information from the user point of view to help enhance that and help you refine that and make it relevant.
Well, that would seem to be a really great pattern for success in the future. Are there any other sort of stakeholders in the ecosystem that we haven't covered that are important?
We work a lot with the commerce team to understand. They're very separate from the editorial team. There's no pay to play, all that kind of stuff. But it's really about understanding, like, an example, it used to be that hair care on our beauty sites was just one big bucket. Scalp care is a different thing for consumers now. It didn't used to be separate. Now it's separate. So the editorial team has, separated the content into scalp care, but then the commerce team needs to know that users are specifically thinking about these things differently and not as just hair care, so that they can also get their testing lab set up to go through all of the scalp care products that are out there and give their, expert guidance on what the best things are for different uses. And so it's that's another group that we work with often.
And is e-commerce actually, like, they're actually selling stuff, or is it the sales, commerce and sales?
Like the actual, like the round, like if you go to thespruce.com and get like what are the best bath towels, it'll be like then we have like testing lab, like huge infrastructure, enormous.
More than Consumer Reports, I think Neil said, right?
Yeah, it's huge. It's a lot. And they test everything, and they have like really rigorous protocols and blah, 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 and no advertiser can influence what we test or anything like that. And so it's that kind of thing. And then, it can be like a partnership with a real retailer, that's the word, retailer that kind of fulfills that, because we don't fulfill the sales, obviously, we connect it.
So what you're working on today that floats your boat?
So I am leading a lot of the recommendation and process with combining with Amazon, which is a blast, because to me it feels like, Decipher is amazing, but as we initially were using it, it's very much like on our O&O and with our data and just that. And like I said, all data is just partial. It's not full truth. And I feel like I'm getting like some really high quality information that I can combine with our really high quality stuff and really hone in on reaching the right person at the right time.
Very cool. So I know it sounds almost cliche, but what advice would you give to a young person who wanted to get into the data strategy and insights game?
I would strongly. So I was a math and psychology major, and I would and then I did my PhD in cognitive science, which is really mathematical modeling of human behavior and perception. And even though I don't do any of those things anymore, the experience of all of the statistics and probability and the dynamics of the math and having a sense of the shape of what numbers mean, which is a weird way to say it, but it's the way I feel about it, is like math like tells you the shape of the thing, and you have to know you have to train yourself in critical thinking and eliminating confounds of explanations and thinking of the right experiment to run and what are the right comparisons so you can control. And I just find that the people that have done that in some way, like statistics, probability, that kind of stuff, even if you're not using it every day, it just gives you a better sense of where of how much to trust the numbers. And if you're a little more removed, you're like, well, the formula said this, so I'm making a deterministic decision. And you lose a little bit of that nuance. So for me, what I always encourage people to do is take probability and statistics classes, take measurement theory classes, like get into what these things really mean. You don't need to know a t-test formula, but you should probably understand what that is and where it came from, because it arms you to make better decisions.
Well, when you're not digging into the data, looking at behavior, or playing Grand Theft Auto, what floats your boat? What do you like to do?
Cook. I love to cook. My favorite thing to do is to open the refrigerator and be like, what's in here? Let's see what happens. So I don't have a favorite cuisine or anything. It's just very much let's see what happens. Which means, some of the points we talked earlier about innovation, it fails spectacularly sometimes. I'll tell you about a roasted cauliflower I made that was the most disgusting thing I've ever made in my life. But a lot of times you discover new things and you get a sense for things. So.
And boy, is it the recipe business, though, and
yeah.
pushing some business, huh?
Yeah.
I'll open it up to questions. Anything that you'd like to ask Joetta? We've got a question back of Greg.
Hi, I really liked your comment about data analysis not being the only way to look at things. You know, a lot of people say they're a data-driven marketer or something, and you can make some really stupid assumptions from data. Can you give an example of something that you've seen where people thought the data was saying one thing, and it turned out to be saying something completely different?
That's such a good question. I wish I had it ahead of time to think of a good example. Hold on. Well, I think if you trying to think of a good, I can feel like the theme, but I can't think of a specific example now. But we look at content consumption patterns all the time, right? And we will have someone come to us and say like, oh my gosh, this content area is just on fire, and everyone is like, look at it's like used to get 3% of the traffic to this site, and now it gets 12%. We really gotta, like, this is amazing, blah, blah, blah. And then they just run with it because the number in the sheet said it went from 3 to 12. It also turns out that the editorial team wrote 25 more articles in that category. Like, it's like things like that there are, I think the thing, like, that's not a great example, but I think the thing is that if you rely too much on math as like just true, it's not, it's a language. But if you rely too much of it on as truth, you forget how complicated everything is, and how like the unofficial motto for my team at my insistence is, it depends, because it does depend. Like, you get a question and there is no yes or no answer on most things. It is mostly like, well, this is suggesting this is suggesting this other thing. When they agree, which is what makes the Amazon and Decipher partnership so exciting, it's really powerful. When they disagree, it doesn't mean, like, all kinds of assumptions were made in what data you collected, what calculations you did, what thresholds you used, what time period you looked at. All of those kinds of things have an impact. And so the end results aren't the answer. The end results are like a signal that you then have to think about. And so I don't think that's a great answer to your question, but that's how I think about it.
But I imagine confirmation bias enters into that stuff all the time as well.
Powerfully, yes. Yeah, if you're looking for something, you can probably find it. Like,
question over here.
I got one. Great job, Joetta and Bill. Excellent stuff. I can't help but be struck by the large number of people you have working with. You've got a data insights team. You've got a measurement team.
I'm very lucky.
Love it.
It's also really hard.
Great stuff. It's great, but a lot of the folks in this room, myself included, don't have the benefit of that type of power behind you in the army of people.
Yeah.
So resources or recommendations, it's too easy to say, where do we start? Because many of us know where to start with some of our audience data, but other resources or recommendations to maximize that, to get the most out of the data we do have with probably a much smaller team.
Yeah, so when I started at Dotdash, I had a team of 2, and it was the 3 of us, and it was a lot. And I think one of the things that we thought about a lot is you often have to strike the balance between everything I could know about something, and like, what's the degree of fidelity of the decision you're able to make? And so for me, that was something when we were a really small team that like definitely could not possibly, somehow we still can't possibly do all the things we should be doing. And when we were that small team and there was just no way, because there's only 3 of us, I did a lot of like, they were like, we want to know everything we know about blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, what is the decision you're making? Because sometimes the decision was basically like, should we nudge it this way or nudge it that way? And I'm like, then you don't need to know everything about this. You need to know enough to know whether to nudge it left or right. And so I think one of the like, that's not really a resource thing, but the way I thought about it was just like, in some cases, we got to have high fidelity on this because we're making a really important, monumental shift in something. Other things, we just need to like nudge things this way or nudge them that way. Then we simply dial down the quantity and depth of the work we do. And so it's kind of a little like, I tell it still at the team of the size it is, I say like, well, you're never, ever going to do everything on your to-do list. So figure out which things you're going to do at like a good enough level and make sure those aren't the really important ones. And then the really important, spend your time there. And so it becomes this like, it's most, actually you asked what my day is. I feel like most of my day is like reprioritizing things and helping people be like, don't work on that anymore. Stop, that's enough. Like walk away. And as researchers, they're like, but there's so much more I could learn. I'm like, doesn't matter, no one cares, move on. Like your work is only as good as the impact it has on the business because that's what will make them let us grow from a team of 2. So let's demonstrate that value so we can have more people so you can do more of that. And it builds this like, it's not really the resources. I also think knowing, like getting to know market research. I'm really glad that I spent time as a qualitative market researcher and did a lot of quant research at Nissan because I know so many people who have seen so many things outside of my industry, and having those friends and contacts that I can talk to. Sometimes, like I said, information comes from all kinds of places. I don't have to do a study. Somebody knows something about this space and can give me guidance. Someone knows, and those trusted professionals, not like, oh, I did this study, here's the report, but like, oh, over the time I've been working in this category, I've noticed this or whatever. I don't know if those are great answers, but that's what comes to mind. That's where I'm the worst. I'm not a details person, and so I'm like, I don't know, whatever we have is what I'm very much like, is this the tool we have? Okay, like when I started working on the Amazon partnership, everyone was like, so where are we supposed to go? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, I just pushed all the buttons until I found the numbers I needed, like they're here. So I'm not the best for that, but I would say, like, there are a lot of like industry groups that collect like research that others have done, that it can be really helpful, like just to like, I mean, I'm, the ARF and the IAB and like, where you can like log in and see all of this research focused on and all kinds of different topics that, or we have a few subscriptions to things like Mintel or Kantar, where they're doing like the big foundational stuff so that we narrow it down to what's our additive cherry on top instead of doing all the foundational work ourselves.
Well, Joetta, I'd like to extend a heartfelt thank you for joining Audience Architect here at the MACMA Industry Day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
The Parameter One team came from the B2B publishing industry and now serve as a technology partner for the wider community. Their knowledge of industry and ability to apply technology solutions to real problems is widely accepted as their strength. Parameter One offers a media platform. They are perhaps the most well-known for their content management system, purpose-built for publishers, through which they have launched hundreds of sites. More recently, they offer a cost-effective reporting solution that addresses a problem every publisher faces: aggregating data for advertisers from ad platforms, audience databases, email service providers, native ads, and more. This service doesn't require you to use their CMS and can bring immediate cost savings and value to advertisers. If you are spending time pulling together reports for advertisers, you should give them a look. Thank you, Parameter One.